Hey, Beau here, and I want to talk about why positive thinking doesn't work. At least most of the time, it doesn't work, and what to do instead if you want to feel confident, at peace, and happy in your life. So, most people find that when they start this whole journey of personal development and they get into the self help world, and there's all this talk about positive thinking, and most people find when they try that it feels very inauthentic. It doesn't feel genuine because you're thinking positive thoughts while you're feeling some negative emotion. So you're thinking positive thoughts in a way that's you're trying to make yourself feel better, right? So what we have to see first of all is that what we're after is not a thought. What we're after is a feeling, right? We don't really care about positive thoughts. What we care about is feeling good. So what we're after is a feeling, not a thought. So positive thoughts can be a step in the right direction because they can be a catalyst for a certain process that I'm going to talk about in a minute that can help us feel better. But I'm going to show you how you can bypass the whole thought, the conscious thought, and the positive thinking. I'm going to show you how you can bypass that altogether and get right to the root of it. So we need to understand the difference or the connection between thoughts and emotions. A lot of people say that positive thoughts create positive emotions. And I would say there might be some truth to that, but I would say what is even more true is that negative emotions or positive emotions create negative thoughts or positive thoughts. So it's more so the emotion that's creating the thought rather than the thought creating the emotion. So we need to get to the core of the emotion because emotions are like they're like food for thoughts. So I want you to think of like an analogy really quick. Think of a volcano. So a volcano, when it erupts, why does it erupt? It erupts because there's a certain amount of pressure that's built up underneath the surface, and that pressure gets so high that it eventually breaks through the surface and erupts. And I want you to think of these lava chunks, you might say, these big lava chunks that are in this eruption. Think of these lava chunks spewing through the air as your negative thoughts, okay? So it would be impossible, right, to like go through each individual thought and try to like flip each negative thought into a positive one and change all the little chunks, every individual, all these thousands of thoughts. If you have to reverse every one into a positive thought, that's a lot of work, and you're never going to be able to do it because the thoughts are going to keep coming because they're generated by the emotions, and that's what you have to see. So you can work all your life on trying to change all your negative thoughts into positive thoughts, and you're just going to end up frustrated. You might make a little progress, but it's going to be a very frustrating journey. And I know that from experience because I used to buy into the whole positive thinking thing and the power of positive thinking, and it did help me in some ways, but I've made so much more rapid progress by understanding what I'm about to share with you right here. So, like a volcano, your emotions are like this pressure that builds up and it feeds negative thought patterns. So we build up pressure within ourselves by the habit of suppressing our emotions. So the more we suppress our emotions or we ignore our emotions or we push them away or we try to escape our negative emotions, we don't want to deal with them, so we distract ourselves with social media or technology or whatever. The more that we distract ourselves from our emotions, the more and more those emotions build up within ourselves. And those will build up as pressure, and it will manifest itself as feelings of anxiety, stress, anger, irritation. And if it gets really bad, and you build up a lot of emotional energy and you keep suppressing it and pushing it down, it can create very, very severe issues like severe depression and suicidal depression and severe anxiety. And I used to deal with severe anxiety in my past, and I had it really bad, like very, very severe anxiety. And using the method I'm going to share with you in a minute, I was able to dramatically reduce my anxiety, and I experienced a tiny, tiny fraction of the anxiety that I experienced just a couple years ago in my life. So I've made incredible progress by learning how to release this built up tension, this emotional energy that's feeding the thoughts. So if you want to prevent a volcano from erupting, how would you do it? Well, you would find ways to release the pressure, right? You might drill some holes in the earth and release the pressure that way so that the volcano doesn't erupt and it just releases that excess pressure, right? So we need to find a way to do the same thing with our emotions so we can prevent an eruption, some violent or chaotic mental or emotional breakdown in the future. We want to avoid anything like that. And we want to live our lives while maintaining peace of mind, right? And we want to feel good every day. So we do that by consciously releasing the emotional pressure as it is experienced. So when you're feeling a negative emotion, instead of trying to ignore it or distract yourself or do something to get rid of it, use emotions, negative emotions especially, as a trigger to remind you to pay attention. So whenever I'm feeling a negative emotion, I immediately stop, I pause whatever I'm doing, and I just go within and I try to just feel that emotion. And I just feel where it's at in my body. I don't try to label it or judge it or anything like that. I just feel it, and I just focus on accepting it. And this is totally counterintuitive. Most people struggle immensely in life simply because they don't understand that accepting something doesn't mean you're going to continue to live with it. Accepting something doesn't mean that you're stuck with that thing forever. And especially with our emotions, we're never taught to accept our emotions. We're taught to distract ourselves or get rid of them or do something to try to escape them. It's very counterintuitive to accept the emotion and to allow it. That's the very last thing that most people think of doing. It's the last thing that your mind wants to do when you're feeling negative. You want to do something. You want to, maybe even you want to practice positive thinking to try to get rid of this emotion. You want to do some technique. If you're into like self-help and personal development, you might try to think of some like technique, some positive thought or something you can imagine to make yourself feel better, or you go into this fantasy visualization or whatever. Or if you're not familiar with that kind of stuff, maybe you just go surf the internet and you get on Facebook, or you talk to your friend, or you do something, or you eat food, or you do something that's pleasurable, that's like a short-term fix. But those aren't real solutions. Those are just temporary fixes, and that emotional energy is still within you. So you need to learn how to release it, and you release it by accepting it and allowing it to be, and not trying to change it. Not trying to change it in any way, and just practicing complete acceptance of that feeling. And if you do this often enough, you'll eventually realize that negative emotions are just sensations. They're nothing more than that. They're nothing to feel bad about, like feel bad about your negative feelings, like feel fear because you're fearful, or feel anxiety over your anxiety. You're adding another layer. Most people are adding layers of anxiety on top of the anxiety they already have because they feel guilty for having the anxiety or having the stress. What we have to see is that these are just sensations that we experience within our body. And so we don't need to judge them or label them as anything. If we just feel them and relax into them, allow them to be, close your eyes, spend a few minutes just getting in touch with that feeling, taking a few deep breaths, and just saying, it's okay to feel this way. It's okay. And I allow this to be. And if you do that for just a few seconds, you'll notice that the energy, some of it at least, will release. And you'll feel a little lighter, a little more at peace. And then you can get on with your day. And when that emotion arises again, you just do the same process. You pause for a few seconds, focus on just allowing and accepting the emotion, not trying to do anything, not trying to change the emotion, none of that, just complete acceptance. And you'll find a little bit more of that emotion releases. And eventually you can get to the point where this becomes an almost constant ongoing process, where you're constantly releasing your negative emotions throughout the day whenever they arise. And what happens is, I like to think of it like a hot air balloon. These negative emotions are like these weights that are hanging below your hot air balloon. And this hot air balloon represents your level of happiness in life. And as you shed the negative emotions through pure acceptance of them and allowing them to be, it's like releasing the weights from your hot air balloon. And then your hot air balloon naturally rises to a higher elevation. And at this higher elevation, you feel more joy, you feel more peace, and you can see it from a different perspective, because we can't see life clearly when our judgment, our perception is clouded by negative feelings. So when we release the negative feelings, we start finding that things in the world weren't really the cause of our negative feelings. We were actually the cause of our negative feelings by our habit of suppressing our emotions. So when we stop suppressing our emotions, we rise to a higher level of consciousness, we see from a more peaceful perspective, and then life suddenly becomes more harmonious and beautiful, and you see more things to be grateful for. You see reasons to be happy and joyful. And it just changes your whole perspective, all by one simple process of releasing the negative blocks within you. And it's a very simple process, and we all intuitively know how to do this. It's just a matter of turning it into a habit, because most of us have a very deeply ingrained habit of suppressing our emotions, because it's what we've been doing ever since we were young children. So we need to change that habit, and instead of suppressing emotions, we need to create the habit of releasing our emotions through pure acceptance of them and understanding. So I hope this video has been helpful, and I hope you'll just practice this, if just for a few minutes today after you stop watching this video. Just take a few minutes, pause, go within to any sense of frustration or tension or anxiety or stress that's within your body and mind, and just practice complete acceptance of it. Don't judge it, don't try to change it, don't try to do anything about it, and just say, it's okay for me to feel this way. And breathe into it. And that's not to justify the emotion and say, oh, it's okay to feel this way, so I'm going to keep feeling this way. No, that's not what it's about. It's about just giving yourself permission and to stop judging yourself for having certain emotions. And that doesn't mean that you're justifying the emotion and keeping it alive. It just means you're allowing it to be, you're allowing it to just dissipate, that energy to dissipate and leave you. So it's very counterintuitive, and very few people in this world understand this process. So I really hope you'll try it, because it has changed my life in amazing ways, and I can't even describe like the difference it has made in my life. Like, I'm a completely different person than I was a few years ago, and I attribute most of that transformation that I've had to this one simple practice of learning how to release emotional energy through acceptance and surrendering to the emotion and allowing it to be. And this is really a practice of self-love. It's a practice of self-love and 100% acceptance and unconditional love towards yourself, no matter what you're feeling at the moment, and just giving yourself permission to be that way in that moment, and knowing that it's not going to last, and that as that emotion dissipates, you come to life with a new, fresh perspective, and you feel at peace, much more at peace. And the more you do it, the more peaceful you feel. So it's an amazing thing, and I hope you'll practice it. If you have any questions about it, or you're having difficulty applying it, or for whatever reason, just comment below and let me know. And if you have any questions you want me to answer in a future video, please let me know as well. And I'll talk to you very soon.